Hello. Welcome back to Let's Talk Ray Bradbury. If you have not subscribed to our channel, please do. So, if you're new to the channel, Let's Talk Ray Bradbury is the playlist where I've been reading through short story collections by Ray Bradbury, reviewing each story individually, and basically building a large catalog of sort of my records of reading these stories and just a few thoughts and feelings on how these stories, despite being in many cases 70, 80 years old, remain relevant even now in the 2020s. So today's story is The Murder from 1953. This is story number 29 of 100 in the Stories of Ray Bradbury collection, in case you want to follow along. Synopsis: a psychiatrist, as the story opens, is moving through his office, and there is different music playing in every room, the constant bombardment of basically electronic noise. But he goes to a cell, and inside the cell is a man named Brock, who is waiting patiently in the quiet. The first thing Brock does is smash the radio on the man's wrist, the sort of wrist-mounted radio that the man turns on immediately when he notices that the room has been quiet. So the doctor sits down with him, and Brock begins to tell the story of how he's spent the last several days smashing electronic devices. We learned that it began with smashing his own radio and his phone and a few items. Then one day he develops basically a radio jamming device and turns it on when he's on the bus because he's tired of hearing all the constant chatter and noise and music from all the other passengers. And this growing hysteria that he's having with the constant bombardment of the modern world culminates when he gets a gun and begins shooting all the various devices, the talking machines in his house, including the trash compactor, food disposal unit, phones, televisions, radios. Even the bed talks. Every single device talks. There's actually another story in the Ray Bradbury sort of library that is sort of similar to this, and that is There Will Come Soft Rains, about the automated house that survives the apocalypse. I'm sort of reminded of that in this tale. So Brock is eventually arrested and brought to be evaluated by the psychiatrist, because apparently he's a criminal now, because many of these devices are in fact rented and not owned by him, and apparently he doesn't have the right to destroy them. So in addition to doing some property damages, of course the world thinks that he's crazy because they're all so into and obsessed with their electronic devices. So bringing the story to a close, the doctor basically leaves the room and immediately goes back to his constant telephone communication and radios and music, and basically has learned nothing from Brock. So this story absolutely describes the modern world today. The story is written in 1953. I can only imagine if Ray Bradbury was inspired to write a story about the overwhelming nature of electronic noise and gadgets, then how would he feel today, where in every pocket there's a cell phone, in every house there's multiple televisions, computer screens, and a growing number of electronic devices. TVs are refrigerators are even in many cases now online and can tell you what's inside them, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And Brock here, he's an outlier. I'm a little bit like him. I do have some electronic devices in my house, but I'm actually pretty well behind the curve. As a person who doesn't want to sort of follow that course that the modern world is taking, it puts people in a precarious situation. I feel that sometime, where it's like you don't want to be all in with these things, but at the same time you end up missing out on things that you do want, because it requires sort of investment in sort of these new ways of consuming entertainment and information. And like I despite owning a YouTube channel, I hate streaming, so it's like I'm not subscribed to all these streaming services. I don't want to have 10 new accounts, and so I miss out on a lot of shows that are being talked about a lot. in the media, So there's a trade-off to having these views, and the constant chatter, and my television is on a lot of hours during the day, whether I'm watching or not, and so even if you there's this feeling that the more connected you become, actually, the more alone you can become, and I think that's certainly the case with the main character, Brock, in this tale. All right, guys, that was The Murder from 1953, a charming little tale about the present, unfortunately. If you're following along, our next story will be The April Witch from 1952. Please subscribe and return in a few days, and we'll talk about that. See you later.